Happy World Ocean Day and welcome to all of you. I hope you have been having a fantastic day so far. I'm sure you have, learning about all the fascinating and mysterious and wonderful things in our oceans and all the ways in which humans and the sea have this rich history together. I am here to work with you to take all that inspiration and to get telling some stories, which I am super excited about. My name is Laura and I started a place called Fabled, which is a free online storytelling platform, www.fabledkids.com. You can go and create and share your own stories there. I've also got a podcast where I read aloud stories from young authors and interview young authors. I've got social, a newsletter, all of those good things. And we just came out with a book of stories by kids for everyone. And I'm going to share a sea-themed story from there today, as well as some of the creative tips from young authors that are in it. But today we are going to focus on your stories, telling your stories. Very excited for that. And we're going to be using the oceans and the seas as our inspiration. So we are going to do a little bit of warming up, a little bit of getting our bodies and our ears and our hearts and minds ready to tell those stories. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of oceans and stories and how they've inspired storytellers, and hear one of the kids' stories that's themed around the sea. And then we're going to just dive right in, basically. So we're going to do a little bit of brainstorming, coming up with some ideas, and then I'm going to set you off to tell your stories. And then I'm really excited for the part where you share them back with me. Please do that. Brilliant. So I hope you're ready. Why don't you go get a pencil, a pen, a crayon, whatever you use, a laptop, a iPhone, whatever it may be, piece of paper, and meet me back here. Okay, I'll give you a bit of time. I'm going to get mine. Okay, you're ready? Excellent. Great. Okay, now let's start. Let's put them down to one side and let's start with a warm up. So it's actually really important. Your body is creative too. It's got a lot of the creativity inside it. And it's important to mark a moment where you shake off what you were doing before and get in the zone for being creative. And I think the body's a great way of doing that. So should we do a bit of warming up together? I'm thinking a little light sea theme. So maybe let's start with making some waves with our breath. Can you do that? So use a noise in your lips and make the sound. That wasn't really a very good wave sound, like a... You want to try that? A bit of ocean. A bit silly and fun. Then some octopus arms. Can you wave around like an octopus? Just feel those kinks working out. Get your little octopus arms going. Maybe a dolphin. Little dolphin arch. That wasn't... Probably you should stand up and do it properly. Yep. Okay. And let's shake it off like a swimmer. So you've been doing your swimming and shake it off. Shake it off. Shake it off. That feels good. It's feeling good to me. How's it feeling to you? You want to make one up? Come up with a different, like a starfish? I don't know what that would do. Something else, one of your favorite creatures you've learned about today, but you should feel the blood flowing now. Getting in a different zone, especially if you've been in front of a screen all day. That's pretty important. Okay. Next thing we're going to do that I love to do before I start making up stories with young people or getting creative myself is to practice listening. So stories are all around us. They're inside you. They're everywhere. But for that, you need to be really listening. And in fact, ancient storytellers had an idea of the muse, which was a kind of godlike, fairy-like creature who would gift creativity and stories to you, but you had to be in a receiving place. And I like to think about that because I think it takes some of the pressure off, the idea that stories come from other places and that you just have to be ready to catch them. And I think a bit of it might be quite true as well. I'd love to hear what your experience has been with that. Anyway, for that, you do need to be listening. You do need to get still. So after we've warmed up our bodies, we're going to do a little listening exercise. So the way I do this is I sit very quietly and I try and use my ears. It's like a sound meditation. And I think about what is the furthest sound I can hear? And then I bring it in, closer sounds, until I'm hearing my own heartbeat and my own breath. So should we do that together for a minute? So just get really still. Close your eyes if you're comfortable. Think what the furthest away sound is. I can hear the wind in the trees in my garden. I can hear the edge of a car. can hear one of my kids downstairs. Just listen in. And then come closer. Can you hear birds? Can you hear people in the street? Is there noise in the room you're in? Maybe someone's doing some cooking, or maybe somebody's doing some work. Maybe one of your siblings is making some noise. And then get closer in and listen to your own heartbeat, your breath, the sound of the blood rushing around in your head. It sounds a bit oceany, doesn't it? Okay. I hope that calmed and helped a little bit. I find that a really useful exercise. Okay. So, the ocean. I hope you've been learning a lot today, or if not, that you're about to set off and explore all the wonderful World Ocean Day activities to learn more about the seas, the marvellous creatures in them, and why they're so important to us. I've learned some amazing facts already, like I didn't know that every second breath that we breathe effectively comes from the ocean. I didn't know that sea cucumbers poo out clean sand. And I never thought about the fact that the water we drink is basically the same water that dinosaurs drank, because the system just recycles it all the way round, and the oceans are such a big beating heart of how that works. Some amazing stuff, I bet you have as well. And that's great to think about, because that's all inspiration to get your stories building and bubbling up. But also, the stories that you tell about the ocean are hugely powerful for changing people's minds about how we think about the seas. And that really matters, doesn't it? Your voice is so important to that. Now, that doesn't mean that your stories need to have like a moral or a message or be about cleaning up the oceans, although there are lots of good stories that are about that and worth telling too. It's more that stories are how we understand and connect with the world around us and each other. It's really, really important. It's how humans understand things, and it's how we express ourselves, and it always has been. There's a reason that some of the most important world leaders and influencers who've managed to change the world have done so using stories. So it's a great art to learn. And with your imagination, you can become a lobster, an octopus, a dolphin, and you can make your reader or listener become the same thing. You can take them on a journey into the oceans. And by doing that, we will learn to understand, connect with, empathize with those creatures and those settings, to step outside ourselves. And that is the start of learning how to be kinder to those environments as well as just being really fun, right? It's really adventurous and exciting to go to those places using stories. So it will build your heart for those landscapes and for the oceans and why they matter, and it'll change other people's perspectives about them too. So that's one great reason to do it. Another is the oceans are just great inspiration. If you're interested in telling more stories, and I think everybody should be, and you like creative writing and storytelling, then the sea is a great source of inspiration, and it has been for artists and storytellers, gosh, for years and years and generations and hundreds of thousands of years. In fact, some of our earliest creation myths, so stories that we told about how the world came into being, start with the sea. The Maori, early Islamic myths around it, aspects of the Bible, a lot of our ancient myths start with the sea. There's fantastic stories from First Peoples, Native American tribes about sea witches that led on to inspiring Little Mermaid, Hans Christian Andersen. Everywhere you look, there's stories about the sea. Shakespeare mentioned the ocean over 200 times in his plays, and some people think that he might have had a seafaring background. Some of the greatest Victorian novels and some of the most famous early novels were about the sea. You might have heard of Moby Dick, which is a big whale of a book about a whale by Herman Melville. But there are lots of great examples of artists being inspired by the sea, and I think you should be too. I'm now going to turn to one from a fantastic author, a 10-year-old author called Audrey, whose work was featured in our book of stories by young people. And I'm just going to read you a bit of it because it's a little bit long, but it's a lovely story about the sea and set in the sea. And I hope it gets your cogs whirring for what's possible. So it's called Massa Zoo and Keith Moon, and it's by Audrey, who's 10. Here you are, let's look at the page. Okay. The sun gleamed and fired out towards the turquoise sea. Massa Zoo rode on his rickety boat that he had made himself with only a few nails and faded planks. Despite the boat's condition, it rode well because the sea was as smooth as a pebble. Massa Zoo put his hand in the water, letting it trail behind him. He called out, "Keith Moon," in a low, deep voice. All of a sudden, spurts of waves appeared on the surface of the sea, followed by a shelled creature, a turtle. Massa Zoo leaned over his boat and rubbed noses with Keith Moon. They nuzzled for a long time, and then Massa Zoo climbed onto Keith Moon's shelled back, and there they went into the depths of the ocean. At first, Massa Zoo could only see colours floating around in the sea. After his eyes adjusted, he looked carefully, and the colours turned into scaled fishes that darted around in groups. In this magical underwater playground, there were corals with tentacles like blazing coloured fingertips. All sorts of fish, some fish with eyes too close, some with eyes too far apart. There were seahorses that looked dead, as if someone had plonked them in the water, and a floor full of scuttling crabs. You may be wondering, why did Massa Zoo climb onto Keith Moon's back? Well, the true story takes us back to a long time ago, where emperors got everything they wanted. It all started with Massa Zoo's great-grandfather, Mac. Wow, what a story opener. I hope that inspires you a little bit. That's from 10-year-old Audrey, and we've got lots of other wonderful stories in here by young authors. The book is called The Future is Make-Believe, but I also have my podcast, Fabled Kids. It's on iTunes and Spotify, if that ever is inspiring to you. I find young authors incredibly inspiring, and I can't wait to share more of your stories about the ocean that we are going to turn to shortly. So that's a bit about where the oceans and the seas have inspired artists in the past. Now, let's do a bit of brainstorming. Let's get our own ideas creating, okay? So I want you to get your piece of paper now and your pencil or whatever you're using, and just take a few moments, okay? So you get your piece of paper and take a few moments, and you might want to write in the middle. You can do this any way you like. I find it quite useful to just put a word in the middle or a picture that helps get me going. So here I'm writing ocean in the middle. And then start to think a little bit. Just start to write down anything that comes to you, maybe from stuff you've learned today. You know, bits of things that could be characters or settings, but you don't have to think as much about a story yet. Just get the juices flowing. So I'm going to think, I've been thinking a lot about octopuses, so I'm going to write octopus. And then I might write about a myth. So you can just start writing away. You might want to think about... what was your first encounter with the sea? Do you remember the first time you saw the sea, if you've been to the sea? What did it feel like? What impression did it make? Or if you haven't been there, or even if you have, a story you read about the sea, or a television program or movie you watched, or anything like that, think about it. Get back in that place. Write it down. I'm going to write Little Mermaid. I'm going to write about the trip we had to the beach last year. So then you could think about your most recent encounter with the sea as well. What did it feel like? What did it smell like? What happened? Okay. And I'm just writing my little words. I don't know if you can see there, springing off around the place. You can do this however, but it helps just to dump a load of ideas down, and that might give you creative inspiration. Other things you could think about could be, things you've learned today, creatures you especially love that live in the ocean, or activities that take place in an ocean. Think creatures you hate or give you a bit of fear, dreams you've had, anything. So I'll just leave you a couple minutes just to get your ideas down. Brilliant. Okay, and then if you put that to one side, that'll be your kind of list of things to keep juicing over in the back of your head, and that'll give you some ideas to return to and just get you a bit in that creative space. Okay, and then now I am going to set you off basically and let you start telling your stories. But I'm going to give you a little bit of advice from some of our young authors before you go. And a reminder as well, please do share your stories with me. I love to hear them. So you can write them, you can record them, you can draw them, you can do anything you like. And you can send them to me, laura@fabledkids.com. Or you can share them on social using the hashtag #FabledOceans. We'll be tracking that. And I have @Fabled_kids is my Twitter and my Instagram if you're ever on social and that's useful, or that's my email as well for sharing stories. And I would love to share some more of them back out. I've got the Fabled Kids podcast and I'll try and share as many as I can of what you send in to me. I'm very excited to hear them. And in the meanwhile, I will leave you with a couple of bits of creative advice that might help reassure you. So this first comes from Olivia, who's 11. She says, if you have an idea, just write the first thing that comes into your head and don't worry about the details at the beginning. Just get started. And I think that's great advice. It can be so hard, can't it, to get over that first writer's block, but just get going. You've got your list of little ideas to come back to. You can start by filling that out a bit more if that helps. And just start. You can always come back and edit later. It doesn't matter. The bravest and most important thing is to start. And then from Luna, who's 3 years old, she says, you could put an eyebrow in it. A lady, wizards, a table, a dog, eyeball, plant. Well, there you have it. Enough said, really. So I'm going to set you off now for 15 minutes. You can go longer or less if you like, but I find it's really helpful to have a set amount of time, take some of the pressure off and helps get you just to that place where you're just getting those stories out because they're in there and they deserve to be heard. So I will leave you for 15 minutes to make up your story about the ocean. Remember to share it back with me if you would like to, laura@fabledkids.com, or on social using the hashtag #FabledOceans, and really can't wait to hear them. Enjoy storytelling.